Hello, this is Kyla from Hidden Gems Literary Emporium, a family-owned nonprofit community bookstore. And today on our Ask the Author series, we have Miss Susan Edwards, who's the author of this book, What a Trip. And the funny thing is that I was reading this book as I was on a trip for the past 2 or 3 days that I just told you about. So it was funny. Thank you so much for being here today and spending your time with us. We really appreciate it. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us. Okay, I just wanted to ask you 3 questions at the same time. First, tell us what inspired you to write this book, and let us know, is this your first book?
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Kayla.
No.
It's my first novel. What a Trip is my first novel. I've written a children's book prior to this, which I could have brought a copy for you, but I will. I'll make sure you get a copy.
Okay.
But I have been doing a lot of short essays, short memoir pieces, and I wrote one a few years back about this period of time in the late 60s, early 70s. And I just felt that there was a story that needed to be told that was bigger than just a short essay. And at the same time, I joined a writer's group in Watchung, and I had to come up with something to write. And I wrote a few poems, and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to expand on this memoir piece.
Wow.
And before I knew it, I had 100 pages.
Oh my goodness.
And then I thought, what am I going to do now? And then I wrote another 100 pages, and before I knew it, I had a novel.
Wow. How long did it take you to write this book?
It took me a year.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had written the thing, and I put it aside, just thinking, well, okay, I wrote it.
I'm done. Did it. Check. Okay.
And then one of the writers in my group, she said, "Are you going to do anything with that?" And I thought, well, maybe I should. So I started sending out queries, and before I knew it, I had a publisher, She Writes Press, and here we are. It's 2 years later, and my book will be coming out in about 2 weeks. Available on Amazon, so I'm very excited about that.
That's right. And how did you come up with the characters, Fiona and Melissa, the two main characters?
Okay. Well, originally it was going to be a memoir, and I was going to be Fiona, and which is why the girl on the cover has red hair, as I do. And I was going to write one chapter from Fiona's point of view and one chapter from Melissa's point of view. And Melissa is based on a friend of mine from my college and high school days. And as I started writing, all of a sudden, all these other characters appeared, and they were fictional. And I thought, well, why don't I just make this a fictional story? Because there was so much more I wanted to tell than what had actually happened to me in my life. And as I was writing, Fiona took over. She became the main character of the story, and it's kind of her coming of age.
Yes, it is, and it's very interesting being a reader who did not grow up in this time period and seeing things that were kind of normalized, seeing things, I don't want to say too much because it does get kind of juicy, and I want people to read it, but seeing the way that young people in that time thought, seeing the way that people mobilized either for or against the war, which is something we talk about as well. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, you know, I was very proactive in the Vietnam War, anti-war movement. And I just thought, as I was writing this, I thought it's a story that has to be told because history gets lost if it's not retold.
That's
and
right.
So many history books are just, you know, here's the facts, here's the battle, here's what happened, and history is written by the winners. And I thought it was more important to tell the story of a coming of age of Fiona, a young woman, and her reaction to the events that were surrounding her. And so as I was writing from her point of view, and she's anti-war, she's a pacifist, although she doesn't realize it at the time. And her parents are very typical of the prior generation who was, you know, the World War II, the greatest generation. And they don't like her long hair politics. They don't like her coming into her own, because the women's movement was happening at that time. I don't address that specifically in the story, but you can just see as you read that she's coming into her own. She's starting to think for herself. And
they're like, what's going on? They won't let her borrow the car to go to the Woodstock concert.
Right.
So, and the interesting thing about Fiona, and you kind of get this from the first page even, because, so the story starts on the first page when something happens. Should we say it? Is that a spoiler? No, because you talk about it on the back. Okay, so Melissa's pregnant. And it surprised me when we found out on literally the first page. That's like the opening scene. When Melissa's pregnant and she's telling Fiona, and she's talking about how abortions are illegal. So that tripped me out, because I'm reading about a time when abortions were illegal, but I grew up in a time where abortions were legal until like last week, or like 2 months ago. So it got me on this train of thought of just like the cyclical nature of things. And so can we talk a little bit about that and why you included that? And also, can you talk about how, is this gonna be too much? Make sure you get the book. Melissa had to go through, let's not tell what Melissa had to do to get this abortion, but Melissa had to go through some craziness just so she can get this abortion, right? Because it was illegal, unless she did this certain thing, which we're not going to say.
Yeah, well, you know, when I wrote the book, I had no idea that Roe v. Wade was going to be overturned, because I wrote this in 2019.
Oh my goodness.
And this is actually what happened to my friend. She did get pregnant. She did have to jump through these hoops in order to get an abortion. And I can remember before abortion was legalized, the things that young girls would go through. You know, these back alley abortions, you know, doing this self-mutilation, horrible stuff. And Melissa was actually one of the more fortunate ones, because she was able to eventually get the procedure in a hospital. But the shame that was surrounding it, and just, you know, what she had to go through, which you have to read the book to find out. And I had no idea that history would repeat itself, and that we'd be back here today. When I was writing this book, my working title was A Different Time, which I didn't necessarily want for the book. But as I was writing, I was thinking about the political and social climate then versus now. And again, Roe v. Wade never even came into my thoughts. But I just thought, when was it more difficult? Was it then or was it now? And I still don't know. But I had no idea that this would turn out to be as timely as it is with this abortion issue. And it's not the main subject of the book. It's just not, kind of, you know, an introductory part, but it kind of sets the stage for a lot of what happens next, especially with Melissa.
Yeah, it's something that Melissa goes through, and just like in real life, how it affects you, you know, it might be in your mind, but it's not the main point of the story. What would you say is the main point of the story?
I think the main point of the story is just coming of age. And, you know, both Fiona and Melissa, they're exploring their sexuality, they're exploring what it means to be an adult in the world, what it means to just step away from the values that you were brought up with and strike out on your own. And one of the big themes in Well, Fiona's life is she meets Reuben, who she falls
Yes.
madly in love with.
Yes, yes.
And he's a totally fictional character.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but he plans to go to Canada to avoid the draft so he doesn't have to fight, and he's got a lot of reasons for his decision, which are based on his family history. And so her big dilemma as we get through the book, is she going to go to Canada with him? Are they in that much of a committed relationship? Is she going to abandon everything that her parents have taught her, instilled in her, and is she going to strike out on her own or just stay in the world that she was originally comfortable with?
And what happens is kind of interesting. We definitely can't talk about that. We're going to talk about that off camera.
Yeah.
What happened? Okay. Another thing I want to talk about. Have you ever been to the Woodstock concert?
I did not go.
Oh,
And-
neither did Fiona, actually.
Yeah,
She
because
didn't go.
I wanted to go, and that little piece is true in the book. I wanted to go in the worst way, and I didn't have a car. And, my mom wouldn't let me have the car to go. So, and then everybody else who I knew was going had rides and all the cars were full, and I was being punished. And I was grounded, so I never made it. But my husband went to Woodstock.
Really?
And he's the one that kind of filled me in. And then, the horror stories. I mean, it was supposed to be this great festival, and not nobody, but so many people never even got near the music because it was just so many people.
Wow.
And then it rained, and it was a disaster.
Wow.
So I can remember watching TV and thinking, wow, I'm glad I didn't go.
Yeah.
Everybody was drenched.
Really?
Yeah, and they were miserable. And but then a few days later, when everybody got home, all of a sudden it became the event of the century, more or less.
Marketing.
Yeah, marketing.
That's the
is
power
right,
of
yeah.
marketing. They could turn anything around.
But I did go to the premiere of the movie,
Oh, okay.
so I have that for my credentials.
Yeah. One other thing about Fiona that struck me in her family dynamic, and this happens early on in the book, was how there's a moment where Fiona goes to church and the pastor is talking about the war, and she's kind of surprised that he's talking about the war, and he's talking about it in a way where, he's saying that there shouldn't be a war, people are dying, this is wrong. And he challenges everyone to have a bowl of rice for dinner rather than a large extravagant meal. And Fiona is like, oh, I like this. Yeah. But then she's going around and everyone else is like, oh, I'm having this, I'm having that, da da da. And the mother offers Fiona a large meal. And she said, but the pastor said that we should eat rice because X, Y, Z. And the mother says, oh, it's a metaphor. And that was kind of the moment where Fiona, I guess, in her heart and mind started rebelling against maybe her mother or just, I don't know, the church in general, because then she goes into, when she goes on the trip, she goes to tarot cards, she starts, doing tarot cards and stuff like that. Why did you include that specific moment? Because it's a small part of the book, but it's kind of, to me, it felt like the spark to, like you said, her coming of age and her thought process moving forward.
Right. Well, and again, that was something that actually happened to me.
Wow.
And I can remember sitting there in church and the hypocritical attitude of all these people who profess to be so God-fearing and loving, and it just went fling right over their heads.
Yeah.
And I thought, religion is not based on a building. It's not based on doctrines. It's based on love. It's based on sharing. It's based on doing good in the world. And I think that's what Fiona came to realize. And she came to realize that, again, so much of what she had been taught, mostly by her mother and society in general, I don't want to say it was wrong, but it wasn't for her. She was more of an individual.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you go to art school?
Why?
Because Fiona went to art school.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to.
Okay. Now I'm just thinking about Fiona's life and what could be based on your life.
Oh,
and
no,
what
no,
plus,
not
okay,
that
never went
part.
to art school.
I wanted to be a writer, and it took me a long time to get here, but here I am finally.
That's right.
Yeah.
Did you ever go on a trip to Florida on a train?
Yes.
You did.
I did.
That was true.
That part. Well, when we got to Florida, well, my whole experience was very different than Fiona's in the book. But the train ride to Florida, those women in the restroom, those characters, they were real.
Really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
But when I got to Florida, it was just a trip to Florida.
Yeah.
So.
But when this Fiona gets to Florida, it's like a very, very interesting experience. I really like this book. And I'm about halfway through, and it's just kind of cool reading about young people that they're younger than I am now. And obviously, I'm a parent and stuff like that. But it's so interesting reading about teenagers in a totally different time period and era.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you really, really captured that really well. Because when you're reading the book, it definitely feels like that era. There's nothing like Fiona picks up her cell phone, or Fiona goes on Facebook, Fiona goes on the computer. It looks like it's none of that. It was like Fiona gets a letter in the mail from what's the guy's name?
Jack.
And I said, wow, she gets a letter in the mail. Or when she goes to school, and I guess maybe the RA calls and says, Fiona, you have a phone call.
Yeah, it's so different. Yesterday I was listening to, and I don't know the man's name, but he was another author, and he had written a book that took place in the 1980s.
Oh.
And he was asked, why did you write in that period? He says, because I wanted to have it free of technology.
Wow.
And I mean, obviously, the technology that we have today didn't exist in 1969, 1970.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it was a different time back then, and she's just living through that era. What I did a lot of research into how people spoke back then.
Mm.
I researched the music, I researched the political different events that happened, just to make sure that and the music, of course, to bring people back into that time period.
Yes, and I like the playlist also that you included in the back here.
At the end, yeah.
So if you go on Spotify, well, unfortunately I can't share this with you unless you buy the book, but on the back there's a playlist on Spotify. Enjoy these songs referenced in the story and get transported back in time. Listening is free. I think that's so cool. Okay, so let's talk about your process when you were writing this book.
Okay. I have kind of a routine on my days that I write, which are most days. I get up, I work out, I do some yoga, I do a little cardio to get my body and my head kind of clear. Make myself a cup of tea, a little something to eat, and I sit down at my computer and I write for usually 2-3 hours.
Wow.
And then I put it aside. I get to a certain point where it's either a point in the story or a point in my head where I've had enough and I've just got to let it go. I've been told that you should let a theme or an idea run its course before you finish for the day, or you should stop in the middle so that you can pick it up the next day, and I've done both.
Okay.
What I do when I first begin is I go back and I read what I had written the day before. One of the things that writers are always told not to do is edit as they go along, but I do it. I'm a compulsive editor. So I do edit what I've written, I edit what I wrote the day before, and then when I am done with, the whole manuscript, I go back and I read it through. I usually print out a hard copy, I edit that, and go back and make my changes.
Wow.
So I'm pretty disciplined.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah. I'm also, I have a short attention span.
Really?
Yeah, which surprised me, which is one of the things surprised me, that I was able to write a novel.
Wow.
Because up until this point, everything I wrote was fairly short, a couple thousand words. And then I would lose interest. But what this did, it helped to ground me, and it helped to keep me focused. And it just became this kind of way of living for me. And I absolutely love it.
Well, we absolutely love this book, and we're excited for it to come out. So it comes out in 2 weeks. How can people get a copy?
Well, you can go to my website, and there's links on there to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, and a number of places where you can buy the book, or you can go directly to Amazon. And it's available now for pre-order, and November 15th it will be available for sale. There's also a Goodreads giveaway that goes through November 4th.
That's
and
cool.
If you're a
We love
Goodreads member,
Goodreads.
you just need to log on and look for What a Trip, and you can enter the giveaway.
Okay, well that sounds fun. And we're an affiliate with bookshop.org, so we're also going to put it on our site so people can buy it on bookshop.org. And if you do that, a portion of your purchase will go towards our nonprofit, which is also why we love Bookshop. Have you heard about Bookshop?
What's that?
Have you heard about Bookshop?
No, I haven't.
They're really cool. It's this platform where people can order books, and you can click support a bookstore. You click any bookstore that's an affiliate, and then a portion of the proceeds will go towards that bookstore. But then also Bookshop helps, like every quarter they send bookshops, everyone, proceeds of like what they make and stuff like that. It's a new website, fairly new, maybe 3 years old, and they've done fairly well. I think it was started by this one woman actually. Yeah, check it out. Where can people learn more about you? What is your website?
My website is my name, which is SUSEN.
Yeah, it's very
Edwards, author.com.
Okay.
And I have a Facebook and Instagram page, which again is Susan Edwards Author, and just remember it's SUSEN.
Yes. You're the first SUSEN that I've ever met, actually.
Oh, you want to hear a funny story?
I do.
My husband and I were down in Washington, D.C., and we're walking down the street. We're in Georgetown, actually.
Oh.
And there's a sign, Mrs. Susan, Psychic Reader, and it was SUSEN. Yes, I have to go to this book.
Right.
So we go up to her apartment, and I said, you spell your name just like I do. She says, oh, that was a typo.
Really?
So as of now, I'm the only one I know.
Isn't that funny? Quick question: was that person this person in this?
Oh, no.
Okay. We're not going to tell you which person, but that was interesting too. There's so many interesting, just quirky things that happen to these girls. It's just so. Please get your copy of What a Trip by Miss Susan Edwards. Last question, but then I always say that, and then I always think of another one. When are you writing another book?
Well, I have a book. Again, I'm in the probably third rewrite right now. It's a story. I wouldn't say it's a coming-of-age story. It's a story based on my sister-in-law's life, and she got involved with the drug trade in South Florida in the late 70s and early 80s.
That is...
Yeah. So
I want to say cool, but that's not the right word. That is that is a story. That is a trip right there. That is a story.
That is a story too.
Wow.
Sure. Yeah. So I have that. I have, like I said, a first draft written. I'm working on whether I should make it fiction, fact, or memoir, or faction. Kind of a combination of both.
I want to read that. That is juicy. You don't usually hear stories like that.
Right.
Especially women.
Right. I know. She and she just kind of fell into it.
Really?
Yeah.
I have to read that one. SusanEdwardsAuthor.com. SUSEN. Also, feel free to go to our website, hiddengemsliteraryemporium.com, where we will have a link to Miss Susan's website where you can purchase her book, some little info about her. And thank you so much for joining us today. This cover, last thing, you see, I always do that. This cover is so cute. And it really draws you in. Before we go, can you talk a little bit about how you picked this cover and why there's a little Volkswagen here? I know why there's a Volkswagen here, but they don't.
Okay, well, She Writes Press, who published What a Trip, they gave me several covers to choose from, and this one just stuck out. It had everything because there are a number of trips that Fiona goes on.
Yes.
Journeys, physical trips,
yes,
and also some drug-induced trips.
Yes.
So I like that. You have her face here, you know, so you get an idea of what she looks like, who she is. It looks like a road. It's the colors of the era, and she did have a green Volkswagen.
She did. Yeah. Okay. Get your copy. Last time I'm going to tell you, this is mine. Thank you, She Writes Press, for sending me an advanced reader's copy. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
Thank you. Okay, Ray, that's it. Ray edits all of our...
Well, this was fun.